So yesterday I talked about back pain and some of the potential root causes. Today, I want to delve into the biomechanics and the forces at play when it comes to your spine and the influence that has on both spinal health, but also performance. Shearing, the spine and... So first we have extension, which is where your back kind of arches up into a cobra-type position from yoga. The opposite is flexion, which is what happens when we curl the spine forwards, like in a sit-up, which you should never do. Next is compression, which is where the spine is effectively being squashed back together. Now this happens all day due to gravity, but you can also get compression from exercises like squats and core lifts. And then the opposite of compression is traction, where the spine is being lengthened out. Now you only really get this on chin-ups though. These next two forces don't really have pairings or couplings. They're kind of more like lone rangers. Shearing is where the vertebrae slide forward relative to each other. And then rotation, where the spine has a twisting applied to it. Remember the glute med video when I talked about muscles' actions and functions? Now they're different. Function and action are not the same thing. And how I said that most muscles with their function, they're actually anti-movement. For example, the bicep flexes the elbow, but you're much more likely to use it to hold your elbow joint together when you carry all your groceries. For most of the movements and forces in the spine, it's kind of the same. We have the force and then you have the anti-force. Kind of like how the force is balanced between the light side and the dark side.
I felt a great disturbance in the force, as if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror.
So while there's extension with the cobra, you also have anti-extension movements with things like planks and dead bugs, where you're resisting that pull into an extended position. Anti-flexion we see everywhere, with exercises like back planks, RDLs, goblet squats, core lifts, deadlifts, front squats. Compression and traction don't really have anti-forces. They're kind of more on the passive structure of the spine, so it's hard to resist those forces. Shearing has an anti-effect, and it's very closely related to the anti-extension family. And then rotation has a massive anti-component with exercises like the pile-off hold. Anti-rotation is one of the most important things in all of sporting, especially striking, throwing and kicking sports. So when it comes to the dynamic motion forces in the spine, in isolation, most of them are handled pretty well. The big exception is shearing. The spine and the discs hate shearing forces. And so when it comes to loading the spine, the anti-variations plus compression, they handle pretty well, both with ground reaction forces in sport and with weights in the gym. The problem with spinal forces is when you add compression or some sort of loading and then you dial in some flexion, some extension or some shearing force and you create the really big problems. Like when you take a flexed spine and load a heap of compression into it with those round back hideous deadlifts that you see all over YouTube. Like the junior basketball and netball athletes who have these big anterior tilts through the pelvis, jammed up lumbar spines, and then they go and crank all these ground reaction forces into that spine on a weak core every single day. Or when you sit in a chair with a flexed compressed spine for hours on end. The sitting position also puts your core in an inhibited and deactivated position, which further loads up the passive structures of your spine. Over time, add in some muscular creep and you're in a bit of trouble. And then lastly, crunches, sit-ups, and Russian twists. Movements in this family of core exercises, not only do they flex, rotate, and compress that spine under massive forces, they also rewire your core to work backwards, further destabilizing your spine. But that is the topic of tomorrow's video. Do you like my Darth Vader? I tried to, I'm not a very good drawer. I tried, it's... No? Maybe?